Hello everyone, this is Christina Barr with Black Teen News, and today we're going to be talking about the movie, The American Society of Magical Negroes. And it's very interesting, everyone's reaction to this, and it's precisely why I wanted to see it, because I was curious how the actual narrative was going to be in the film and if they could pull it off, but I was very interested, at least in the commentary of it. So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. And if you like what I do here, you guys can consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream around my website, all that good stuff. You guys can also support and give like super chats and stuff if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube or somewhere, you guys can give stars. So anyway, when the trailer first dropped for this film, on the right, you saw people were like, oh, this is the most racist thing I've ever seen, because of clips like this.
What's the most dangerous animal on the planet?
Shark.
White people, when they feel uncomfortable. White people feeling uncomfortable precedes a lot of bad stuff for us.
On the flip side, there are people from the left who didn't seem to want to give the premise at all a chance, because they didn't like the idea of the society of Black people capitulating to white people's needs and their fragility or whatever. And also this idea that this Black character was going to be with this white woman, but she was actually mixed as well. And she had, I think, Vietnamese in her background. They didn't really say, but I think I read that somewhere. There was hatred from both sides. So I was kind of fascinated by it, because I'm like, who's the audience for this film? I'm like, and after seeing it and still seeing the commentary around it and reading some of the reviews, it's like the audience would have to find their audience, they'd have to blindfold themselves and shoot a gun into a thimble. And maybe there's someone out there who will enjoy it, but it's kind of difficult for them to find that audience. And they really haven't found it, I suppose, because they're like barely making $1 million last I looked, or over the weekend it was like, oh, barely $1 million. So it's not really doing well as far as making money. But as far as reviews, the critics don't like it. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 30-something%. Audience score those at 65% last I looked at it. So audience have a better view of the film. Now, there's different people who haven't liked it because they don't feel like they mix all the categories that the movie is in well together while dealing with the narrative that's going on. Okay, so if you watch a trailer, you're like, okay, magic, comedy, romance. So how does it handle those things? Well, first of all, as far as like the romance aspect, it's not some kind of epic love story. The romantic love interest, her purpose is to bring the main character Aaron into his bit of a revelation of self. And that becomes very clear. I guess throughout the movie it should be clear, but obviously clear at the end of the movie that she was meant to be his support system. There is romance, but I think it's a little much to say that it is a rom-com. Then let's look at the magic aspect. There's not a lot of magic pretty much in the film. There's not a ton of world building. I mean, the society explains itself. It does exposition. They have these classes where they talk about the history of it and so on. But if you think that it's going to be Black Harry Potter, which some people foolishly went into the movie thinking that this isn't your film and you're probably not going to like it, the point of the magical society is to drive the narrative. That's their purpose. They're not even supposed to like use their magic outside of their intended goal. Like there was someone who like wanted to get like a steak dinner, use their magic for that. And someone was like, no, you can't do that. It's supposed to be servicing your client. So no, you wouldn't see Quidditch matches and other things like that. That's not the purpose of the magic. It's all to feed in this narrative. And as far as the comedy aspect of it, I did think it was funny. Is it going to be like the next great Black comedy? Is it the next Fridays, the next I'm going to get you sucker or something like that? No. But I did think David Alan Grier was funny. There was different things about the society, different terminology that they had that was pretty funny. The main character, he said some things that could be funny sometimes, but mostly I thought David Alan Grier was the one who was driving the comedy. Some people in the theater laughed at other things that some of the characters did. I didn't think like the main president of the association was very funny, but I could see how some people would think it was funny. and there were, again, people who laughed. I think the energy, how well you enjoy a film, especially with a comedy, depends on who you're seeing it with and the energy in the room. There were some white people in the room who didn't know if it was okay to laugh, which was also kind of funny. And there was one like unapologetic guy who sounded like he was white. And if you're like, how do you know someone's white? You don't know. But we do have, I believe we have different kind of thickness to our vocal cords. And so sound a little different. To me, it sounded like a white guy who was just had a interesting laugh and was just unapologetic about it. And he made everything else funnier too. So I overall enjoyed the film, or at least my experience at the movies. But the reason I wanted to see the film at all is because I was interested in how they were going to handle the narrative. So if you wanted to like bust a gut out laughing, you probably were, I don't know, disappointed, but like maybe mildly amused. If you went in there trying to see a bunch of like cool magical things, this wasn't probably the film for you. And if you wanted a rom-com, I definitely don't know why you came to this film. But I wanted to see it because I was interested how they pull off the actual narrative of the story. Which, by the way, there's some people who don't even know if they're allowed to say the name of the film. And the lead actor kind of said that as well to someone. I hope that's a joke. They put it in the title. You should feel free to say it. But the man at the concession stand, when my sister was ordering our food to be delivered to us, like at our seats, which, by the way, the chicken fingers were really good. Imagine Theaters, you did a good job there. He was like, "Oh, I see you're going to the American Society," and they wouldn't say the rest of it. And so my sister's just kind of waiting, like, what's the rest of the film called? And I told her, I said, you should have been like Green Goblin.
Finish it! Finish it!
But, you know, there's people who don't want to say the name of the film, which is funny, that the film title is making white people uncomfortable, because the purpose of the film is about not making white people uncomfortable. So there's an interesting irony there. So anyway, the premise of the film is this, and I'm going to give some spoilers, not like terrible spoilers, but I don't know how else to talk about the film without addressing some things in the film. Not that I can't give a spoiler-free review, but I want to talk about the concept of the film and some of the nuances and how some people just are so offended or hate it one way or another. So I got to get into some of the details. So one thing that is important to understand is that the magical Negro is a movie trope. The magical Negro is someone in a film who helps the white characters along. Like the character in The Green Mile, which this film did a spoof of, parody of within it. There was some crotch grabbing that I was like, why do they keep doing this? But apparently that was something they were mocking in The Green Mile. There was also like the character from The Shining, and you could say Whoopi Goldberg from Ghost. And they don't need to literally be magic, but sometimes they are literally magic. Now, Key and Peele did a skit about this that was quite funny.
You need to find your own troubled white boy. I was here first.
And some people are like, well, why did they just make that a whole movie? And this premise, that premise was like, there's two magical Negroes and there can be only one. Like, that was the joke. I don't know if that was enough to kind of make a movie out of, but they're not the same. They wouldn't be the same movie if they went with that kind of concept. But anyway, some people are like, oh, they should have called it Black Magic or something along those lines. And the movie wasn't about the magic. The movie was about the premise that they have to pacify the white folks. Like that's the premise. So people aren't doing a bunch of magic stuff in the background. That's just not how it is. The main character, Aaron, has been uncomfortable around white people. It opens up, he's trying to sell this yarn sculpture at this like modern art sort of gallery. So David Alan Grier's character sees him and ends up recruiting him to the American Society of Magical Negroes because he's like, you are one of the most uncomfortable person I've ever seen around white people. And he lets them know that that's because you can feel that they're uncomfortable. And when white people are uncomfortable, it's very dangerous for Black people. So the society exists to basically ease that discomfort that white people feel. So as a whole, Black people can be safer in society. As he joins the society, he starts really being able to see like, oh my gosh, I have kind of felt this uncomfortable way my whole entire life. I have been capitulating to white people my whole life and pleasing them my whole life. And so he starts kind of working out his issues. And so he gets assigned his first client, who is a tech bro named Jason, who's very mediocre, but he believes he's so talented. People treat him like he's the stuff. But everyone knows that the female love interest, who Aaron is in love with, is actually the best, but he's like the guy. And so he's been upset as of recently because he launched a project for the company. It's basically kind of like a Facebook. And it's supposed to have like facial recognition software, but somehow it failed with diversity or something and picking up, I guess, very dark people. So it's caused a big uproar like you would see in real life with social media users and stuff saying it's racist, etc. So the company has to rebrand. So he has this big project. The CEO of the company is like a typical, I don't know, stereotypical white foreign billionaire. And he's kind of like a competent Michael Scott with some of his comedy and stuff. But they say things about the company that are typical, you know, making fun of companies need to be diverse, but not actually do important things at the end of the day. So there's caricatures all around. Jason seems like a nice enough guy, but as like the story progresses, you see he has a lot of microaggressions that he pretty much commits, and he's ignorant on some things, and he assumes that he gets things that he deserves because he's so successful just based off of his merits, when that's not necessarily the case. Like he succeeds because he's good and other people don't because they're not as good, when there's other factors at play. For example, the love interest Lizzie, she wanted to present the big kind of launch to the CEO, but she got shut down for doing that. They said that, you know, Jason was a better fit. So Jason assumed that he was the better fit because he was just better, when the truth is that she's far more talented than he is. But the reason why they didn't really explain why they didn't want to go with her and they thought he was a better fit. And I think the presumption is supposed to be like, he's a white man. But I think that there could have been like some sexism there from the woman who made the decision, because she wanted to move up in the company, and maybe having another talented female there would have maybe threatened her. To me, that kind of seemed like the more logical reason as the story progressed, but they didn't really make that totally clear. But he ends up asking Aaron to help with the presentation, and Aaron doesn't really have to do much, just like clicking slides and stuff. The reason why they want him there is because the presentation is about diversity, or that's their new relaunch brand, and so they want a black person there. So that sets him off, and he goes into this big speech, and which leads to the society having to oust him because they have a collective power base, and if someone goes against the mission, then that ends up dampening their magic, so they end up ousting him. And usually they will erase your memory, but they couldn't erase his memory after they ousted him because he kind of impacted other people in the society, where they began also being open and, I guess, telling white people how it is. So that's basically kind of the gist of the end of the film. And I've seen people say that it was so racist, one of the most racist movies I've ever seen, which, watch more movies if you think that. But like Nerdrotic said it was the worst movie of the year. I really like Nerdrotic's page, by the way, but he said it was worse than Madam Web. No, I haven't seen Madam Web, and I was tempted to see it just because of how many people were saying how bad it is. I've seen snippets of it on TikTok and other places of people posting stuff, read about it, seen people do reviews or whatever of it. I just find that really hard to believe that Madam Web is a better film than this. So I don't know. I think that's some bias there, but I do love Nerdrotic though. Now, if you want to go in there and fact check stuff about police brutality and police shootings and stuff, you can do that all day long with this film, sure. But it also doesn't change the fact that these people still believe that, and Aaron believes that, and other people believe that. And it doesn't really change the historical truth that things used to be particularly dangerous for Black people, and if you were on the wrong side of a mob, things could go very poorly for you. Or if even people found out that you were Black, it was going to be a mess. How many Black people, their families lied about being Black and just claimed they were Italian? My grandma claimed she was Italian once so she wouldn't have to go to the back of the bus. And her father, he worked at a store, and her mother told her to not go to the store and call him daddy, because if she did, he would lose his job. So there's definitely, I guess you could say, a historical need there. However, you could also see that these people are kind of re-traumatizing new generations as they come in with their mentalities. There's some people who are critics on the left who hate the idea of the society at all, that there would be folks that would try to kind of do this underhanded saving the world by pacifying white people. And they think this isn't the way that we should do civil rights, and how come they're not mentioning things like BLM and all this? Like, they felt like they really should have gone harder with that stuff, or they've said that this film didn't really speak to the Black experience and the plights of Black people like they really should have, and they tried, but the narrative didn't go hard enough. And, you know, David Alan Grier has a part in the film, and I don't want to, in case someone wants to watch it, I don't want to go into detail about it, but his backstory with his dad and something his grandmother said really explains the mentality of this society. So I don't understand why so many people are triggered by the narrative here, especially like on the left. But people were also not satisfied with Aaron's big speech because they didn't feel like he went hard enough. Now, I already mentioned that his love interest, Lizzie, was basically the support to him to help to get to, for him to get to his revelation. Lizzie saw him as a human being. Like, she just was interested in him, and he didn't really feel like other people were interested in just him as a human being. And what set him off with Jason and their presentation was that, well, come on, it's a diversity thing. So he's like, I'm here because I'm Black. It sounds like you just want me here because I'm Black. And so that invalidated him as a human being because they just saw him as a Black face. So that set him off with his back and forth with Jason. And then eventually he just exploded and started talking about how he believes he lives in a world where people don't like him. I guess Black people in general, and they want Black people dead. And he's internalized that sort of hatred on himself and didn't feel like he deserved to live and exist, I guess. And so he has come to the revelation that he does matter. So after he gets done with his big speech, Jason just says, I didn't know that. So this very confident know-it-all all of a sudden has this clarity of, I didn't understand what you were going through. People on the left being mad about that speech is kind of puzzling to me, but he did at one point say that everybody is racist. So I imagine something like that was probably triggering for the folks who didn't think it was woke enough because they don't believe that Black people can be racist because we don't possess the institutional power or whatever. Now, I could say there are things that he believes that are kind of hysterical, and you could kind of sit down and say, okay, here's some data. You should not have this hyper anxiety about the world, and no one is out to get you like that, sir. Not you specifically as a Black human being. Like, most people just kind of want to go on their lives. There's danger out there. My sister watches Buried in the Backyard, and they talk about it quite a bit. It's a dangerous world out there. But even if how he feels isn't quite an accurate representation of the world, that doesn't invalidate the fact that that's how he feels, and unfortunately a lot of other people feel. So he needed to be heard, and he doesn't just need to be validated in the things that necessarily aren't true, but he at least needed to say what he needed to say, and people can have a discussion and go from there. Now, Aaron probably did not need superpowers. He probably needed therapy or something. Or apparently he needed a girlfriend, because at the very end of the film, it turns out his girlfriend was actually a part of a society of supportive girlfriends and wives. So she did her job just finding his need, because Aaron was supposed to find the need of his client Jason, but she found the need of Aaron, which was to be seen and heard as an individual. So it is kind of funny how the people who don't think this film is woke enough don't like that it wasn't representative of the Black experience that they wanted pushed out in the narrative, when the point of the film was Aaron needed to be heard and seen as an individual. Now, I actually thought it was an interesting concept, and I wanted to see how they're going to be able to pull it off, because there are people out there, not just Black people, but just in general, people will just try to go along, get along, not offend for their benefit, don't rock the boat. So I thought that this was a conversation worth having, I suppose. It was a narrative or art piece with something interesting to say. Do I think that it was the most amazing sort of art out there and that they nailed it? Not really. Like, there was, and just from a direction standpoint, like, there were some scenes that dragged on too long, and some of the shots I'm like, why is it up there that way? And there's different editing choices that I would have made, and there's different writing choices that I would have made. Like, one thing that could have been added, my sister brought this up, that the ending could have been more like Monsters Inc. Like, in Monsters Inc., you know, they were scaring children because the screams powered their cities. And eventually they found out that laughter was a better source of power. And instead of their mission being, well, we just need to ease white discomfort because that's safer for us, it's that we could just talk to these people and let them know our feelings and stuff and have these conversations. And that in the long run, that's what's going to make the difference. Now, they kind of did that and showed like quickly, like, oh, things are changing. They did like a quick montage of different people standing, you know, having better conversations with their clients and so on. But there's a meter that they have called the white tears meter, kind of showed how upset people were, not upset or whatever. And the meter could have visually, they could have had it change and them have a conversation of, oh, it's better for the society if we rethink how we operate. And you saw the seeds of that happening, but it was so quick that I just think it could have been done better. But they still ousted Aaron, but they just couldn't erase his mind. From the trailer, I thought that they were going to like be coming after him because they're like, he's going to be with the girl. So it wasn't like how I imagined it was going to escalate. It definitely wasn't epic in the romance at all, but the part where they actually outs him is kind of anticlimactic. Now, Nerdrotic did mention in the society that it was started like with slaves, you know, trying to pacify their angry masters. So, you know, more slaves weren't beat or whatever. And he's just kind of like,
why didn't the
American Society of Magical Negroes
slaves who invented the magic use it to escape slavery? You could teleport, for f***'s sake.
It was pretty funny when he said that. Now, the context of the actual film or the premise of the film is that they decided that like overall this was the kind of the best way overall to fight white people, is just to, you know, lull them into this sense of security or whatever. So I don't know, running away would lead to more outrage, I guess, and if you go by the premise of the film. But I totally get why don't they just run away. It makes me also think of Leonardo DiCaprio when he was in Django.
Why don't they kill us?
because they can teleport. I don't know how strong their magic was initially when they started it, but I do want to point out that I do have a story that takes place, and this is Charlotte, who is a slave, who isn't magical, but she does have powers, and the power is to teleport. And she is a common sense Negro and uses it to escape. So it's like American Civil War meets X-Men, to explain it really quickly. Charlotte, when she was a child, she was purchased by a woman named Lady Cohen. And she thought she's supposed to like mind the house, take care of the master's son, etc. But when she gets older, she realizes that they actually selected her because she has a special ability. So even though she discovers her ability and it can make her free, there's this group of evil zealots that believe her kind are abominations. So that kind of leads to different danger as well. So it's a cool book, and there's a sequel and stuff that you guys can check out. But will be a link in the description that'll lead you to like an Amazon page if you're interested in the book itself. But yeah, My Magical Negro had enough sense to run away. But overall, I know that in life there are people who kind of adjust their behavior or what they say, what they do, because they don't want to upset other people. That's beyond like black, white, right? So this premise like isn't so far-fetched to me. At least the actual point of the story isn't so far-fetched to me. Now, I can't say that I've personally lived my life trying to adjust my behavior for other people. I know that there's people do that in the media all the time. And there's some people on some big networks that don't want to upset their particular audiences, and say the wrong thing that will upset them. I don't care if I upset you guys. I mean, a little bit I care, but I can't live my life just muzzling my mouth. I have to be honest, because at the end of the day, I have to look at the mirror at myself. So, but I know people do make accusations where they'll call me a pick-me or something, assuming that I'm a conservative because I'm trying to appease white people, which isn't the case. So they believe that there's people out there who are at least being a bit of a magical Negro. And even though I don't believe I've been a magical Negro, there have been instances where I've definitely had to face different, what they'd call microaggressions, because half my school career was in an urban diverse area, and then the other half was like in a rural area, where I was one of the few black kids, and kids would have questions, kids would say ignorant things. Some kids did extraordinarily offensive things where I had to stand up against people, and I just had an interesting experience, and I know my sisters did as well. So I know I'm not the only one. I don't think just because people say insensitive things or they're ignorant that maybe they're bad people. We just need to have conversations. So anyway, overall, I think this was an interesting art piece, though it's not like the best thing ever. It's not a must-see film. It's really not. But I do think it was interesting, and I'm glad that I saw it. I enjoyed it, but I can understand why a lot of people on the right don't like it. I'm not surprised. I guess I'm not terribly surprised that there's people on the left who didn't think it was woke enough. But if you're intrigued by the fact that there's people on both spectrums that didn't like it, I guess you can go check it out for yourself. But again, it's really not a must-see film. I was really interested to talk about it. And so here I am sharing my thoughts with you guys. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys decide to check out my book or some of my other books. I have 17 that are published, actually. But check out blacktnews.com, check out different content, articles, videos, etc. I know this episode right here, I obviously talked about a movie review, which I do talk about movies and pop culture and other things. Sometimes I do primarily talk about politics, and I am a conservative. But if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, watching frequently, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bells and go to the website and drop in your email. God bless you guys, and I will see you next time.